Welcome to another episode of Around the Table with Powerful Women. I'm Christi Daniels.
I'm Joy Caffrey.
And I'm Wendy Love Edge.
And today our episode is about thriving through the holiday season. So I associate the holiday season with lots of happy people, lots of joyful things. I, in my past, had experienced other people being happy during the holiday season, whereas I had so much inner angst and conflict about it. So just to say, it's the holiday season doesn't necessarily mean it's happy for everyone. Mm-hmm. And so that's a little bit of what we wanted to talk about today. Mm-hmm. So what about your experiences?
Well, I grew up in a Jewish family, and I remember as a child wondering why this big holiday that everyone loved so much wasn't a part of our lives, and why Santa wasn't coming to our house, But we had our own celebrations, and that's kind of what my mother focused on with us. We have our own celebrations, and it's great to also be included in other celebrations. Mm-hmm. So we had families from all different backgrounds that we were associated with, and so whether it was Christmas or Kwanzaa or solstice, we did experience all of it, but just not in our own home. It was Hanukkah, which is really not a big holiday. Mm-hmm. It became a bigger holiday because there's so much focus on Christmas. Right. But as far as the religion goes, it really isn't that big. And so then when I had my first child, Jacob, I had kind of come away from Judaism. But when I had my first child, I felt really compelled to bring him to temple and get involved there. And we were mostly with other Jewish families or friends at the time. And I remember it was around Christmas time, and he said to me, we were driving down the street and there were all these beautiful lights. It's such a beautiful season. But he said to me, he was about 4, and he said, "So, do we hide on Christmas?" And I actually felt really bad about that. I didn't want him to feel like, that even though we weren't going to celebrate it in our home, that we couldn't experience it with the community. Mm-hmm. So it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to talking with him about other holidays, other cultures, because I think that you can feel excluded when Christmas is the primary focus. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this, if you choose to feel excluded, or you can become a part of all the celebrations.
Right, and connect from humanity versus from a particular lineage of religion. Right. Connect as humans to each other of celebrating.
Which is kind of, as our family evolved and we came away from organized religion, we created our own celebrations. And so you're absolutely right. What do we want to celebrate as human beings? And it doesn't have to be attached to any religion, really.
Yeah, I've actually taught a workshop during the holiday times about reclaiming your holiday joy. And because it seemed more natural as a child, right? And then as you become adults, we kind of get a little bit of that Grinch and Scrooge humbugness can filter through us as we're dealing with traffic and commercialism. And so I loved looking into what are the archetype images that come up during the holidays. And one of the things I would do in that workshop is allow people to get out a big lecture pad. Okay, let's say everything we don't like about the holidays.
Oh, right. Let's get it out.
Yeah, let's get it out. So let's even do that right now, and then I'll add to some of the other things that I remember hearing. So what are some of the things that you didn't like or you don't like knowing the holidays are approaching? What are the things that, I don't like that part of the holiday?
One of mine has been the consumerism and, with my children, like this expectation that you're supposed to shell out a ton of money for gifts that in the grand scheme of things, end up in the back of a closet. So, that was really frustrating as somebody who really values simplicity and minimalism, to have the influx of that, come in. So I would feel anxious and, have a little anxiety about what are we going to do with all this stuff. And it felt very against my own beliefs and wishes and things. That's just one.
Yeah, I can agree with that one. It feels very pressurized, and especially when you have young children, you know, that you have to perform, you know, and their friends, you know, they compare notes about what they got or didn't get. And, I think that is really stressful and kind of removes kind of the point of the season. I think it's nice to give some kind of gifts, but the competition and the overspending.
The overspending is what
it's so stressful, you know. And then I think, so that's definitely, I agree with that one. I think also pressure to attend events.
Right.
You know, so much socializing and which ones should I go to, and then there have been times for me also when I didn't have events to go to, and how sad and upset I felt because of what was going on in my life. I just felt like I didn't fit in anywhere, and where, you know, I wasn't invited to anything. What am I going to do with myself? You know, so yeah, that can be very stressful too for people, I think. Either way.
Yeah, for me a little bit it was that wanting to be generous and wanting to be financially responsible.
Right.
And so I love generosity, and I love the act of wanting to give something to someone, right? And that, you know, and I could get caught up in that, oh, this is so good for this person, this is such a good match. You know, and you get a lot of those good matches, and then all of a sudden the bank account doesn't look like what it looked like, right? And so there's that tug of war, right, between that expansion and contraction around generosity and overspending. Yeah,
absolutely. And what was your upbringing like? You didn't get to tell us how it was for you.
So I grew up Catholic and Christian, and I was a unique little kid where I would really tune into the soulfulness of the holiday itself. And so for me, like, Christmas has always had this just really like magical awe of maybe, well, actually, even in my 20s, this is a little representational of that awe I would feel as a child. Is I had a dream that I was actually in the camel caravan with the wise men, right? And I was actually on the back of one of the camels, and
you could really feel it.
Right?
Oh, wow.
And then stopping at night in a circle with a fire and feeling the transmission of reverence and awe and wonder, like, of what, like, this star that we're following, and where is it going to lead us, and that, like, a sense of hope. And so I think that is just naturally alive in me as a child in one way. And then I also felt the same thing about the presents under the Christmas tree and comparing them to the siblings. Like, one time my brother caught me, he would listen to my phone call conversations and heard me complaining about maybe something I got for Christmas that was not like what my sister got or something, and him getting on my case. And so I think I felt both things, like very, very childlike in that confusion of it all, and then also with taking away from the commercialism, feeling the awe of the holiday itself.
I'm recognizing and hearing your story. What it was like for me was there's an emphasis on, you know, the religious from a Christian perspective, and, you know, some of the Santa commercialism, but I always had this inner conflict going on, and I'm feeling it in my body as we're talking about it. That you know, I tried to kind of find my place within Christianity, you know. And the season, I think, always would make me tense up, because what I would see in front of me just did not match what I knew to be true in my own body and in my own bones. And so it was almost like the season itself, not nature in the season, but the things that the people around me were doing and valuing and sharing and promoting, just created a lot of tension in my body, a lot of inner conflict that I couldn't really express as a child, and it took me years to really understand, you know, what that is. So I'm just noticing also in what you shared, there are these opposites, this tension between wanting to be participating in events and not wanting too many, and wanting to be included and not, and you know, the joy, and also the reverence, but then also the commercialism, and so I sense tension in this holiday season.
I think one of the ways my husband and I sometimes would resolve a little bit of that with both the generosity and the spending is we would use Christmas to buy our kids the type of clothing they needed anyway.
Right.
We show them, like, we know we're going to buy them these things because they're growing little kids. And so we would use it, we'd also get them other little things, but we made it a very functional gift giving.
Well, and that's what, on Hanukkah, we give 8 gifts, right? But you're supposed to give, most of them should be practical things, like underwear, socks,
exactly. That's what we do.
some money, some chocolate, and then maybe you might have a few other little things. So it's a different perspective to give your children what they're going to need as part of the holiday, and it's kind of joked about. I think Saturday Night Live has done skits about it. It's kind of socks and underwear.
I love getting the socks. I love the socks. It also, for me, I feel it as a very creative time of the year. In the fall, I get really creative, and maybe it's that being inward, and because it's cold outside, and I love making things, and so I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Nice.
I love that that's in tune with natural cycles as well.
Yeah.
That was just the fall phase of like hurry and produce and come to completion and get out, preserve or save or, before we go into that creative void, that's the winter time.
It's exciting, So when I did that list, I was amazed at how many other things that people listed. So I want to say some of them out loud that I thought about. And some of it is when people have divorced parents, the struggle of whose house to go to,
right?
And or when so people have different ways of expressing love, right? And gift giving is one of them, but there's 4 other ways of expressing love. And when one person in the family bestows these gigantic gifts, and then that sensation of guilt when you don't have something to give back because you weren't even planning on it. So that was some of the things on the list. Other things were people who had children that were in the military felt really distant from their children and felt that sadness about that. The traffic was one of them. Like, in fact, when people were listing Joyce and college as one of the worst things about Christmas, like intersections and trying to get parking spaces, or sort of some real practical things, or not knowing how much food to buy, and unexpected guests. And anyway, so I just want to throw out a lot more that's just so human, that we have, like, these are really real things.
Absolutely. I didn't think about those, but as you were saying them, I could resonate with most of those too, right? Yeah.
And I like to actually look for the generosity and the awe and the joy. Like, I remember, being in Walmart. We live in Walmart's headquarters, and in one of the stores, there was a big old jolly man just singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer online, and by the end he got, like, everybody singing it, and it was just so fun. And so that kind of spontaneity of people willing to be a little bit more open to strangers, I think that comes out at the holidays, and that's something that I'll choose to focus on. Is how, can I look for that? Can I see where that's happening? People seem to be a little kinder at the checkout stand.
Right. And I remember when people did a lot of caroling. You don't really see that anymore. As a child, we actually would participate in that, and I really enjoyed it, and would meet neighbors that we hadn't met before. But I think people are really more afraid of strangers.
Donna and Kelly Mulholland would do Christmas caroling at the nursing homes, and
nice.
we've gone with them on occasions to Christmas carol with them at the nursing homes.
Nice. Yeah, well, I think when we're talking about thriving, I think choosing those things that create community and connections help us to thrive at this time,
what are some things that you use for yourself as
for me, for thriving? As an introvert, I really feel like a downshift and a need to protect my time. So, I'm making spaces on my calendar where it's okay. I know that if this is going to happen, like, for example, my son is going to India at the end of November, so we're having like a Thanksgiving before the weekend before, and so I know there's going to be tons of people there. There's going to be all this external output, and so I need, like, I scheduled this intuitive Reiki haircut, and it's like the before, like that week before, and just downtime pre-charging myself, because I know there's this expression of energy that if I kept at that pace, I wouldn't be able to keep up, and I'd end up being sick, during December, just not worth
So
it.
planning ahead.
Yeah,
really important.
and including myself in my calendar, right? Giving myself space before I commit to a lot of other things, I think is helpful. To not be exhausted.
You brought up something also, you're having Thanksgiving not on Thanksgiving. And so this was something that my mother started doing once we were adults and everybody's busy and had different jobs and schedules. Say, okay, what day are we going to do Thanksgiving, or when do you want to have Hanukkah, because we'll be around that time. And really it made it less stressful, because everyone is like rushing on to Thanksgiving to be there on the day, and earlier when my children were little we were doing that, but as we got older, I don't know, she just sort of relaxed a little bit, and I think it's a great idea.
It sounds like it relieves the pressure.
It does, because on Thanksgiving you can relax because everyone's got the day off, and then maybe on Saturday you'll have your big meal, and more people might be able to come because they were committed on the day.
Exactly.
So it's really kind of a good way to continue to thrive.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people get really stuck on it has to be the day.
Last year, my husband Tim and I took care of ourselves in a different way. It was going to be the first year in the 30 years of having children that none of them were going to be home on Christmas in Fayetteville. And I didn't want to put myself through waking up in the house without any of the children there.
Right.
And so my self-care was to plan ahead of time, and my husband and I scheduled a weekend in the cabin in Eureka Springs, or 3 days, 4 days, right? And I made sure that we were at the cabin way before Christmas Eve, early the day before Christmas Eve, so that it was just naturally that we were there, and not that we drove out on Christmas Eve and woke up, because it would still have that feeling of, why are we doing this? And so instead we said, let's have a creative, 3 or 4 days together where we did our own rejuvenation time, some creativity, gave each other some real one-on-one attention, and it was a nice way to use the season in a way that nurtured us.
I love that.
So I'm hearing in both of what you shared, that relieving of pressure and that creating more space around what you want to do or what you're scheduling to do, giving yourself more space and time.
And creating new traditions if that's what it's time
needed.
to do.
Right.
Sometimes I think we hold on to things and make ourselves upset and stressed and feeling bad when, oh, wait a minute, I can do something else.
Right, we have an idealized way that we want it to look, and maybe there's some nostalgia, and we don't allow for the newness of growth and change, and can make it.
And I think what do you find is important to you about the season? So, it might be a religious aspect, it may be some other a practice that you have, but finding the thing that's really important to you and making sure that you have time for that and prioritize that. That seems, for me, to make more of a focus on the solstice. Helps me just, it's just like it amplifies what I'm doing. It frames everything that I'm doing. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's great to see everybody at different events in there, but this is...
It honors your natural cycle for tuning into your spirituality with nature.
I love that. A couple of years ago on Thanksgiving, we weren't having any children coming either. Angela and I were up in Massachusetts, and so we decided we were not having any traditional food. We actually made pizza, and I don't know, and we had all these old movies we were watching, and we were really set with it and excited about it. And then somebody stopped by with turkey, and we were mad about it. We were like, well, wait a minute, we're creating our own tradition. And I felt bad afterwards because I really wasn't very gracious either. I mean, they were reaching out thinking, oh, they don't have turkey. I don't know how they knew that or whatever. And they had the all the fixings with it, and we were just like, all right. Because I think people want you to have a pleasant, happy experience, but sometimes it's their vision of it.
Right, so they might project onto you what their meaning is. Yeah,
and I think there you also touch on that generosity of spirit during this season. Being able to give in the way that you know how.
Right.
May not match with your vision of the holiday season, but the generous spirit
One of the things that always stuck with me when I was probably like in 8th or 9th grade, and I was at a church service, and it was leading up to the holidays, and the priest was talking about how often, right, someone comes over and gives you a gift, and you had no idea they were going to come over, and then you're freaking out like, oh my God, what should I go get them, or throw in a bag, right? And what he talked about instead was giving them your full presence. Give them your full presence as your present back to them, and really pausing enough to say, wow, thank you. Like, you really thought of me in a way that was unexpected. And that just has so stuck with me. So I really try to enliven that in myself. Like, how can I be so present with someone?
That's such a gift today anyway. People are in their phone or, just thinking about other things. And so giving someone your full attention is a huge gift,
Yeah.
I love that. Because I think you're right. I know people who have gifts tucked away,
Right.
That they just go and get, right, but it may not have anything to do with the person.
Yeah, exactly. As the act of giving.
Right.
And I know I've talked before about the art of receiving, right? All of us love to give, but how many are actually skilled at receiving? And so taking that, if someone unexpectedly gives us something, and I want to challenge anyone listening today that if someone unexpectedly gives you something, can you be fully present to receive without having any sense of guilt or shame for not having anything for them? Can you just be present to what they're offering?
Right, because that gift, that sense of giving needs to have a reception for it to feel complete for the giver. Right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah, that's a great challenge. I think that our instinct is, what can I give back? But just being there is the gift. Yeah.
You brought up, when you said something earlier, Christi, I thought of another thing that people complained about on the list, and it was how easy it is to go off of their, quote, diet or their regular eating.
Oh, right.
And so how do we do self-care when there's an abundance of really good-looking food in front of us? And so, just wanted to bring that up as another thing that can challenge
it can
people.
be stressful if someone's really been working to, let's say they're gluten-free and they really need that to feel healthy, and they're trying to stick to it. It's hard to say no to someone. Sometimes, food is like, it's socially important for for you to eat what they're putting in front of you, and that can be really stressful and challenging. For any dietary changes, or let's say someone is just trying to avoid sugar,
right?
And they've been really successful, and then they show up at a holiday party, and
it's the only thing being
that's
served.
mostly what's I always say to people, bring something that you really want to eat, even a couple of things, and then you can share it, but you'll also have things that you can stick with whatever it is you're trying to do. Yeah.
Do you have any creative either foods that you like to bring to the holiday, or do you have any creative ways that you like to share?
Well, so for about 20 years I was vegetarian, and that was kind of anti, the whole Thanksgiving Christmas meal. And so I would bring salad, and I would bring all these toppings, and it would, the most beautiful salad could be made, And so now it's just this, Chris is going to bring the salad. That's just what I bring.
It's an expectation of you.
And for me, I do eat some meat now, but it's a beautiful, just a reminder that I've taken care of my own needs. It's like I can have a huge plate of salad, a little bit of whatever I need, what I want to dip into. But I also, when I'm able to do that, I don't get sick. I don't, all the repercussions that can happen when you really have done the work to try to find what's right for you right now and what your body needs right now. Because that in itself is a gift, right? A gift to yourself. And then people like in my family who've not had salad, for a long time. It seems like such a simple thing to have salad, but
creatively made.
Exactly, they're able to creatively, put the different toppings on and just super, super enjoy it. Whereas they might not sit down to that every day of the week.
Right.
So
it's a gift for them too. Even if they're going to consume some of the other things that might not be so healthy, at least they've got they've got what you've brought, which is beautiful.
One of the things I like too around the holidays, again, it opens me up to creativity, and that even means in the kitchen. And so maybe exploring new things to cook with the kids or my husband, and I like that part.
It is fun. I remember when going to my parents' house, being in the kitchen again with my mother, you know, working on either old recipes or something new, and that's, I think, part of the thriving too. You're reconnecting about the family and the foods that are made, maybe ethnic foods or traditional foods that you don't get to make very often.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, for sure.
It's a treat. So what were some of the recommendations in the class that you...
Well, mostly for me, it was helping people. So I probably usually do a guided meditation to help people get back into a childlike sense of awe and wonder. Right.
Nice.
So eliciting, how can we, sometimes we could, let's say, release some of the adult mindset and get back to just the childlike awe. And so I would give them things to think about that can help elicit or open that back up for them. I remember one thing as a child living on Long Island, we'd go into New York City and see the store windows and all of the little mechanisms that were moving. They would have trains moving and little dolls moving, and that creativity, those store windows are just phenomenal, and how they're decorated. So that sense of creativity, again, I guess that keeps showing up for me. That's one thing I think of. Any other thoughts that you guys have?
Well, I know that what you're just sharing reminds me that we've taken our grandkids to the lighting, and so they just love the lighting, the wonder of that. And
It's so nice in Fayetteville that they do that. I feel like when I've been there, I see many people that I know, and it just keeps creating community and connections, and it's something that anyone can enjoy, and it doesn't matter what background they have or what.
And I like going at an odd hour when there's not so many people there, but there's so many lights, and it's really magical. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's other things like that, whether it's a music event or a play, or things that you can do as a either family or family, and get together and enjoy those things. I think putting that into the schedule, like, we're all going to get together and go and attend this concert together and experience it together as part of the season.
We'll tend to do family hikes together at the holidays as we gather, which is, so that's again getting back out into nature, noticing what's happening in the season.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of avenues to come out of that stressed, I have to perform a certain way, and instead I'm going to take these avenues so that the season is a one that thrives and feels good to me.
And one of the things we love to do as family together time is play games. And whether it's board games or card games, and our son is often introducing us to a new board game, and it's a time that I think we all cherish, of gathering around and having that fun of learning something new. And
board games. It brings you back to childhood too. I think that childlike wonder. When you'd sit around and play Monopoly for hours or Risk, right?
Both of those.
So I think that's a great idea too. And I think if people can just step back and remember the things that brought them joy about the season, and stay with those instead of thinking about the expectations of others, that can really help.
Where we put our attention, right? We can choose to look at what's working, what's jolly, what's magical, what's inspirational, what's awe, and bring more attention to that to enliven it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that too. The sense that if you're putting your focus on the things that bring you joy, the things that you feel reverent about, the thing what's meaningful for you, what gives you more space, then it's almost like it crowds out. There's little room for the rest of the stuff. It's just a little bit of chatter in the
Even
edge.
if it just dawned on me too, like when my kids were small, I was divorced from my husband, and you brought that up earlier, but I was also thinking about just the the expectations of each parts of the family that you're trying to fulfill. And so, again, that's stepping back and just saying, well, that's what they want me to do, but I'm going to, figure out what works for me and for my family.
Yeah, I think the importance of building in those pauses to see what's in attunement with me in this moment, what's in alignment with what my soul's asking for.
Yeah. And depending on when you're listening to this, we're recording this in early November, and so it helps to go ahead and think about that and kind of have your plan going into the season, so that the season doesn't just meet you face to
Show
face.
up, right?
Yes.
That's another thing I do remember of
Really?
I'm not so time oriented. So there were many times where December 23rd or 24th, one of those last minute shoppers.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think forward planning on anything is always helpful. And thinking it through. What is it that I really want this year for what do I want my season to look like?
Yeah, and what would it feel like? And what would, go ahead and actually put yourself into that. And then have that vision, that feeling guide you in your...
I like that in our workshops we've been doing recently and reading the Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and she talks about coming up with 2 values. And so maybe as you're saying all this, I'm thinking, why don't I think about which 2 values do I really want to bring into this holiday?
Yeah.
And then remember that as I'm making my choices, like what...
Can you give an example of the values for the holiday season?
Sure. Well, for me, so it might be a generous spirit. It might be bringing creativity. So that might mean going someplace with a more creative energy, or bringing creativity into my home with more greenery or something of the sort. Or maybe my value is connection, right? And so I'm choosing what's the quality of connection. And part of, for me, I was having a conversation about connection recently too, and it's about caring about the emotional state of others, not just showing up physically, but caring about their emotional state. So if I'm valuing that, then maybe how can I be a little more sensitive or tending to, like paying attention to how are you feeling? What's going on in your world right now? How can I be sensitive to it? One of the things for me that I like to remind myself is meeting my kids at the front edge of their growth. And since we haven't seen our daughter Serena in over a year, and our son Ben in a while, like how can I bring fresh eyes, right? So that might be something that I'm wanting to value is bringing a quality of freshness to my sense of connection. Those are a few that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Or trusting the flow. I'm just throwing out a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do any of those spark for you? Or?
Yeah, trusting the flow. When she said that, it just kind of hit me in the chest. Because there have been, like I said, so my family is mostly deceased. I have my wife and my 2 children. Both children live far away. And so there were times when, since that has all happened, where it was hard for me to trust that it was going to be a joyful time, right? And I didn't know what I know now, how to just create that myself and not be concerned about who's going to invite me or what am I going to do, or so there wasn't a lot of trust. But I didn't know how to cross that bridge, where now I'm just like, okay, I'm remembering my mother switching gears to, we'll choose a day to do this. And it doesn't have to be all that pressure. And so I can create whatever I want to create and may or may not have the children there, or, or maybe decide to go somewhere with a friend. It doesn't, whatever you want it to be, and just trust that what is right for you is going to come out of this planning and thinking ahead.
Maybe I'm hearing trust the flow and trust the expression.
Right.
Of what is the expression going to look like? How about you, Christi?
Yeah, 2 really big values for me, mostly, and at this time of year, connection's one of them. Depth of connection. So I don't often get depth of connection when I'm in mixing with a lot of people at the same time. And so I appreciate quality of connection if I'm having tea with someone, or if I'm going for a walk with someone, investing that time to really hear about what what's going on in their life.
Right.
And feeling that connection, and then the spaciousness, you know, that I was really recognizing when you were both talking about pressure and relieving pressure, that the spaciousness for me to feel like I can move as I can honor my needs and what's important to me through this, and I don't feel that I'm needing to live under a thumb of expectations. That just drains the joy,
especially being an introvert. I would think. And also, when you're talking about the connections, I was thinking about my wife Angela, because she's also an introvert, and she can't stand small talk. You know,
I know.
So like these gatherings where everybody's just kind of talking about the weather, or you know, she's like, you know, please take me now. You know.
But I love challenging people at those. Like, I love seeking depth, right? Yeah. And so I love, you know, they might say something on a surface level, and then I love just encouraging them what's under that, and what's under that, and what's under that, you know. And so I actually have playful fun of figuring out how can you pull something soulful from this person, because they are soulful, right? Yeah. And they often get surprised, but then actually like the conversation, and so.
I love that.
One of my questions that I use often is just what's new in your world, and then they get to choose whatever seems to be like the focus for them, and then I try to do that and just kind of like sense deeper.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which I think many people at those kinds of gatherings want that too, but they just aren't sure how to initiate it. So
so maybe we could brainstorm a few more questions. You know? So what's new in your world? What are you doing that's giving you a lot of energy? Yeah. That might be something. What's exciting you?
It could even be a more surface question, like, what's your favorite food?
I do that a lot.
What were you waiting for, you know?
Have you read anything interesting lately?
Yeah. Or seen any movies that you loved, you know? And it just, their answer can give you that glimpse.
Right, or any reflective memories from childhood that really like get you stimulated about the holidays.
I love that, asking people, because people light up when they want to talk about their family. Sometimes, not always. They might not want to, but they can let you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that actually reminds me of a really great memory I have of this time of year. And it was my cousins, we must have been, I don't know, maybe, I think I might have been 8, 9, 10, not quite sure. But somehow we would always go to my grandparents' house. We lived in Oklahoma, they lived in Missouri. And somehow they were able to arrange for all the adults to be inside the house, for all the grandkids to be inside the house, and to have a Santa Claus walk, and this is way out in the country, to have a Santa Claus come and walk in front of the windows and then drive off in a Volkswagen Beetle. It was just, it was like this awe and this wonder and this, who is that? And, and so now I kind of have it narrowed down to, I think, who it was. I'm still not sure. I think I'll try to ask again this year. But, it was that sense of awe and wonder and being able to, like, that's a great question. I'm sorry to divert us, but that was
I love that too.
Yeah. I haven't thought of that in a long time.
Well,
I think we're good.
I think it might be time to wrap it up.
So we're wishing you a thriving
holiday.
Thriving holiday
Absolutely.
season. And I hope that something that we shared today empowers you to really have a really beautiful time, whatever it is you decide.
Whatever that self-connection and or reverence or care for the holidays is for you.
Absolutely. Create the holiday season that you want.
Yeah. Cheers.
Here's to a joyful, soulful, and edgy life. See you next time.
Bye.